Hi. We've been talking about naaxiin, and I just wanted to show people how I prepare the cedar for the warp. So in this video, I'm going to show you some preparations that I do with my cedar. Every spring I go out and I'll get yellow cedar. Yellow cedar is found way up on lumber roads. It likes the top of mountains, and in Washington State, when I used to live there, my cousin and I, Lisa Telford, we'd go way up on high, narrow timber roads that we'd of course first ask permission, and the park people knew we were there, and we've been helped often with very helpful park people. But anyway, in Alaska, it's often called Alaskan cedar because it does like the cooler weather, and it's going further up north as the weather warms down here. It's actually becoming, yellow cedar is becoming endangered because of global warming. And so you're seeing yellow cedar go further up north, found up in stands up further north where they've not traditionally been. So we see the cedar moving north and leaving the south, actually, because of the warmer weathers. But anyway, I'll show you a few photos of how I put it in the my glass container, and I steeped it for about a year or a day and a half. And so I put the coils in, you'll see that in the photos, and then I wait and I watch to see how those cadmium layers just puff out when it's ready. And so it's pretty dramatic. You keep watching, and then when the water gets really dark, then you dump that water outside, some place where you don't want to damage anything, and then you put fresh water in there. A lot of times with spruce root, you want rainwater or distilled water, but when it comes to preparing the yellow cedar for clothing, you really don't have to use distilled water. Anyway, you want to make sure that you don't dump the water down your pipes, because it is laden with spruce gum, and you don't want that to gum up your pipes. So so at the final, then you take it out and you cool it, and then you're going to split it into real fine pieces, like as small as a blade of grass, as long as you can possibly get it. That's how thin you want to split it. So you take a unserrated knife, a little paring knife, and you're just going to take and slice it. My paring knife isn't that sharp, but I'll make do with what I have. So I've brought up a little bit of that fiber. So then I'm going to take and I'm going to roll down the strip and split it as long as you can. That wasn't that long, but it can be used. It's going to be used. Okay. And then you're going to split it. Keep the material moist. Let me get you closer. Keep the material moist so that it continues to be workable. My sister, Holly Churchill, and my sister April Churchill, and my mother Dolores, they do this in a very wonderful way for baskets. But with the textiles, you really don't need to have to worry about at least the width. With the cedar, just as long as it's thin. Okay, and oftentimes people will even like just mangle it up and then the fibers split up like that. And those fibers can be taken and peeled off once you work them that way. Then you can peel them off. So that is what you need to do to create the fibers that you're going to spin with your warp. So many people have always, asked me, and not that many people know how to create the naaxiin warp and how to work the yellow cedar. And so one thing about yellow cedar is when you go out into the woods to gather it, of course you thank the tree, and you do not take too much. You're always going to just take not even 1/4 of the circumference, the width of a strip, just really not much, because you really want that tree to be strong and continue for another 100 years living. And we often call the cedar trees our sister. They're our sisters, and so there's a lot of respect for those trees. I know in my family, there are people who they know that there's cedars around, or that there are cedar weavers around, and so they'll come to my family and they'll say, "Hey, we're going to block this this section, and you can take all the bark you want out of those trees because we're going to down them next week." And a lot of times people will do that for us weavers, and but in my family, even if that is so, we will go to where they've invited us to gather, but we will never go around and strip the bark from around that tree, even if it is going to get downed the next week. We just it's against our nature to do that to a tree, and so we still practice that rule of not taking a lot from each tree. And you never go back to the same tree. You harvest a tree, you thank it, you harvest it, and you wish it well, and you hope it grows another 100 years, like I said. But we just would never girdle a tree in our family. And I hope that people who use the cedar will have those protocols and that respect for the tree. Let me think of another thing about when you harvest. and you take strip it off the tree, and you take that outer bark. It's important that you leave that outer bark on the forest floor, and that you turn it up so the rough side is up, so it blends into the earth, and that's important. You don't want to leave where you've harvested. You don't want to leave it a mess or even to look messy. You just want to handle everything about that tree with respect, and respect the forest. There's been times when we're in a really good place, and I'm excited about all the good cedar we're seeing, and then I forget to thank a tree, and then I walk away and I get slapped. It always happens. It's you just really have to thank the tree, because there are consequences. Too many times I've been slapped in the woods because I didn't thank that second tree that I harvested. It's every tree. It's not just the first tree. It's every tree you need to recognize and respect when it gifts you with the cedar. And that's so important. I just hope many people that have been taught, I know my family teaches that respect, and it's just so important. And also, I know that there's a controversy about selling cedar, and I don't buy my cedar. I gather my cedar. I promise the tree that it's going to be part of a robe, a clothing, and but there are people who will gather and then they go and sell, and that's fine. If you trade, you're trading something of value, and you're respecting the person you're giving it to, and they're respecting that gift and giving you a gift of barter, and something that you respect, and that's fine. But if you're trying to start a business selling cedar to strangers, or it just isn't right. It's our resources, and it's been our traditional resources forever, and we just really want to continue making sure that this isn't a commodity. It's living and life. And there's so many stories I've read where the cedar, if a hero was in the course of his adventure, someone dies. There's been where the person puts the cedar, a mat or a cedar cape over someone, and that will restore the people. So I think that we've always recognized that cadmium layer is where the life of the tree, it receives its nutrients and all it needs through the bark. And so with that, knowing that it's a rejuvenating material, and so we've always valued it, not just for what it can do for us, but also we recognize what it does to keep those trees healthy too. So there's a lot of healing that can happen with cedar in all its uses and stuff. And so anyway, in talking about how we use this yellow cedar with clothing, I definitely want to emphasize the respect that everybody needs to show for our trees. After reviewing my video, I noticed that I kept on saying cadmium because I'm a painter of the different paints. There is a paint called cadmium that is based on some metal chemical. Anyway, these the bark is the inner cambium bark of the cedar tree. And this is the result of today's work. And I just wanted you to see that, again, you have it as wide as a blade of grass, as long as you can have it. And once it's prepared in the water, for the day and a half of steeping. It's quite easy to get to some really nice fiber for rolling. Cadmium is the inner bark of the tree that you'll be working with. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining me today. Oh, and if you're curious about my my apron, I know that you saw Mad Cow. Well, it's Mad Cow Happy Salmon, Ray Troll's design. Okay, thank you very much.